¿Por qué es tan difícil hablar español? Do you know these Spanish words that change meaning in every country? What words in Spanish do you know for this? In countries like Mexico, Venezuela, or Colombia, we can call this a carro. In Spain, this could be a coche. We could also use the word coche in Mexico. In countries like Argentina and Chile, we can say auto. I'd like to quickly say, I'm most familiar with Mexican Spanish, and I'm not going to mention every country for every word in this video. So, if you're a native speaker and you want to comment something about the Spanish spoken in your country, please leave a comment on this video. Gracias por ser comprensivos conmigo y lo siento si cometo algún error en este video. What do you think this is in Spanish? The most widely accepted word for this in Spanish is palomitas. However, in Bolivia, in Paraguay, we can say pororó. En Panamá o Puerto Rico, podemos decir el popcorn. En Argentina, pochoclo. En Bolivia, pipocas. En Chile, las cabritas, which literally means little goats. En Colombia, las crispetas. En Cuba, las rositas. En Ecuador, canguil. En Guatemala, poporopos. Y en Venezuela, las cotufas. Who knew there were so many words for popcorn in Spanish? Pretty fun. What about this? The most common word for pen in Spanish is bolígrafo. You can hear this in Spain, Mexico, Peru, Colombia. It's also common to hear the word pluma, literally meaning feather. However, it means pen in countries like Spain and Mexico. Many Central American countries like Bolivia and Ecuador use the word lapicero. And a very interesting one used in countries like Argentina and Uruguay is birome. The reason people in countries like Argentina and Uruguay use the word birome is because Laszlo Biró, an Argentine inventor, invented the ballpoint pen. He was originally from Hungary, but was nationalized in Argentina. You can also say esfero in places like Colombia and Venezuela, and lapicera, which can be heard in Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay. If you'd like to learn even more words, phrases, and slang from different Spanish-speaking countries, check out our Fluent Spanish Speaker Academy. We teach you how to become fluent faster. You can get all the details by going to SpanishWithNate.com or by clicking the link in the video description. What do you think this word means? The word chucho in Mexico can be a nickname for someone named Jesus. In Chile, el chucho is jail. In places like El Salvador y Guatemala, chucho means stingy or cheap. In Mexico, we use codo to call someone cheap. And throughout Central America, chucho can mean dog. How would we say this in Spanish? In countries like Mexico, Guatemala, y Honduras, we use the word frijoles to say beans. And I would say frijoles is the most commonly understood word for beans in Spanish. In places like Argentina y Chile, we can call them porotos. En la República Dominicana y Puerto Rico, we can say habichuelas. En Venezuela, caraotas. Y España, judías. I've also noticed that many times Colombian Spanish speakers pronounce frijoles as frijoles. What about this? In Mexico, we call this a popote. En Colombia y Venezuela, un pitillo. En Costa Rica y Ecuador, una pajilla. En Argentina y Bolivia, sorbete. En Chile, bombilla. En Panamá, carrizo. En Cuba, absorbente. En Puerto Rico, sorbeto. Y en España, pajita. What about this? The most common word for this is dinero. In Argentina, Colombia, and Peru, you'll hear plata, literally meaning silver. In Mexico, we have the slang lana, literally meaning wool, to refer to money. En España, pasta. Y Argentina y Uruguay, guita. What about this word? In Spain, it's common to use camarero. Throughout Latin America, it's very common to hear mesero. In Venezuela, mesonero or mesonera. In Argentina y Uruguay, mozo. And throughout the southern cone, you can hear garzón, which from my understanding is more formal. However, if you're a native speaker from this area, leave a comment down below letting us know what is most commonly used. What about this? In Mexico, Peru, y España, we call this a pimiento. En Argentina, morrón. En Chile, Venezuela y Colombia, pimentón. Y en Costa Rica, chile dulce. What about this word? The most commonly accepted word in Spanish for awesome is genial. In Spain, we could say estupendo. En Argentina, bárbaro. En México, chido. En Venezuela y Colombia, chévere. Y en Chile, bacán. What about this word? In every Spanish-speaking country, a machete is a machete. However, there are many slang terms for this word. For example, in Argentina y Colombia, un machete can be a cheat sheet. In Nicaragua, machete can be the grind. In Uruguay, machete can mean stingy or cheap. Y en Venezuela, machete can be a male private part or great. What about this word? Guagua in countries like Chile, Peru, and Ecuador means baby. However, in Puerto Rico y la República Dominicana, guagua means bus. What about this? In Latin America, this is jugo. But in Spain, they say zumo. What about this word? En Mexico, una torta is a sandwich. In Colombia, a torta can be a pie. In Venezuela, torta can be a pancake. Throughout Central America, una torta can be an omelet. In Spain, in certain South American countries, torta can mean cake. What about this word? The two most commonly accepted words in the Spanish-speaking world for this are apartamento and departamento. However, in Spain, they use the word piso. What about this? Cuba, la República Dominicana, y Puerto Rico, we can call this a banana. In Mexico, Colombia, y Peru, this would be a plátano. In Mexico, we call a plantain a plátano macho. In Costa Rica y Panamá, a banana would be a guineo. Y en Venezuela, un cambur. What about this word? In countries like Mexico y Colombia, we use the word agarrar, meaning to get or to grab. In Spain, they'll use the verb coger. Be careful with this one in Latin America. Now let's look at 6 bonus words. How would you say this in Spanish? In Latin America, we say manejar for to drive. But in Spain, they'll use the verb conducir. What about this? The most common word for strawberry is fresa. However, throughout the southern cone, you'll hear the word frutilla. Also, in Mexico, someone who is a fresa is someone who is stuck up or a snob. What about this? The most widely understood for a jacket is chaqueta. However, be careful with this in Mexico because it has a different meaning. In Mexico, we would use the word chamarra for jacket. In the southern cone, we'll hear the word campera. What about this? In Latin America, this is a computadora. However, in Spain, this would be an ordenador. What about this word? In Latin America, a tortilla is, well, a tortilla, the one that you're very familiar with. But in España and Cuba, una tortilla is a potato omelet, which is incredibly delicious. And finally, what does this word mean? The The most common meaning of the word mono is monkey. However, throughout the southern cone, mono can be a cartoon. In Spain, mono can mean withdrawal symptoms or cravings, and it can also mean cute. In Mexico, we can use the word mono to refer to someone who is cute or attractive. And in Colombia, mono can be someone with a blonde hair color. How many did you know? Thanks so much for watching. Click the like button and subscribe now if you haven't already. And if you'd like to learn more Spanish from me, go to SpanishWithNate.com or click the link in the video description to join our Fluent Spanish Speaker Academy. Our goal is to help you have a 10-minute conversation in Spanish in 90 days without feeling nervous. Check it out by clicking the link in the video description. Hasta luego.